The news that Mike Bickle has preyed on young women for decades, according to the recent news from the Roy's report, which included an interview with his first accuser, Jane Doe, raises the simple question, why did Mike Bickle create IHOP? In the past, he was given the benefit of the doubt that his goal was admirable and his motivation noble. But because of the number of women he may have impacted, and the horrible way they were treated, and the number of years he exploited them, we can no longer simply assume his motives were pure. Indeed, the new revelations give insight into his state of mind around the time when IHOP was founded. If he was going after young women while he was setting up IHOP, you have to wonder if he set up IHOP to get access to women. To consider whether the human heart is even capable of thinking like this, we look at Jeremiah 17 verse 9, which says, "The heart is deceitful above all things, and desperately wicked." What if Mike Bickle created IHOP to lure young women? What if the spiritual goal he stated was really just a pretext to draw them in? Nothing looks more spiritual than 24/7 prayer and worship. Anyone proposing this looks super spiritual. It would therefore not take much for godly women in America and around the world, who are interested in prayer and worship, to be lured to the International House of Prayer led by Mike Bickle. All indications are Bickle is a predator. It is well known that predators of young people seek jobs which give them access to young targets. By the same thought process, they can start businesses or organizations which give them opportunities where their targets are more available. Brad Tabb is a former pastor who exploited a teen girl then tried to get a job at IHOP. In his job application, he did not disclose his personal history with this girl, and he got the job. Some IHOP leaders started to wonder if he wanted the job to get access to young people. In the past, it was believed that Bickle created IHOP by direction from God. But at the same time he said he was getting direction from God to start IHOP, he was giving direction from God to a young woman that his wife was going to die and she was going to become his wife. Are we supposed to believe that God was speaking to Bickle? His relationship with God was so bad at the time due to his continued sin with the young woman, there is no rational basis to believe he was hearing from God, or even asking God to speak to him. Who may ascend the mountain of the Lord? Asked King David. Who may stand in his holy place? The one who has clean hands and a pure heart. Psalm 24 verses 3-4. Proverbs 15 verse 29 says, "The Lord is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous." Psalm 66 verse 18 says, "If I regard wickedness in my heart, the Lord will not hear." John 9 verse 31 says, "We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will." Bickle was not a godly person and was not doing God's will. God was not listening to him. He portrayed himself as super spiritual, as if he had a special relationship with God, and as if they were close friends. But Jesus said, "You are my friends if you do what I command," John 15 verse 14. He did not do what Jesus commanded, so can anyone believe he was a friend of Jesus? To believe Bickle was a friend of God, you have to assume God did not know Bickle was exploiting the woman, or did not care he was breaking one of the 10 commandments, "You shall not commit adultery." But Proverbs 15 verse 3 says, "The eyes of the Lord are everywhere." And Jesus never said adultery is a minor issue. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Matthew 5 verses 27-28. He then said, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell." Verse 29. It defies reason to believe someone who looks super spiritual, but is so unspiritual they are not even obeying God on one of the most basic and important timeless commandments God ever gave, is at the same time so spiritual they are receiving special revelations from God to start an international prayer and worship ministry. It is even more difficult to believe God would lead anyone to do this, knowing that person would use it to abuse women. 1 Timothy 3 verses 1-6 says, "But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power." have nothing to do with such people. They are the kind who worm their way into homes and gain control over gullible women. The other reason for not believing Bickle heard from God to start IHOP, beyond his continued sin at the time, is he lied to the young woman about what God had said to him about his wife dying and she would become his wife. This is clearly a case of Bickle deceiving someone about what God had said, and it was around the time he claims he heard from God to start IHOP. Mike Bickle once said, "Most supernatural experiences I hear about I don't believe. Most supernatural experiences I hear from Mike Bickle I think are lies, including, and especially, the ones where he claims God led him to start IHOP." Bickle was not hearing from God about his wife or the woman or IHOP. Bickle started IHOP not because God told him to start it, but because he wanted easy and continued opportunities to prey on righteous young women who were spiritually submissive.